You're listening to the IWD406 Podcast with your hosts, Julie Walls and Kate McLaughlin.
Today on the podcast, we have Dallas Knight. Dallas transitioned from an Army combat veteran to an intelligence analyst with the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department before working with the DEA for nearly a decade, focusing on dismantling criminal syndicates and disrupting drug operations. In September 2023, Dallas published Shattered Reflections, a memoir detailing her time as a military police officer in Iraq. She also created the Not So Average Jane podcast for female combat veterans to share their stories. Dallas is now organizing a retreat for female veterans through Not So Average Jane LLC, aiming to foster healing, growth, and connection starting in June 2025. Without further ado, Dallas Knight.
Welcome, Dallas.
How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you, ladies, for having me today.
Yes.
Thank you for being here.
You know what? Let me just throw this out there. We are like where our studio is. We're up in the Northwest. You drove how many hours to get here to be in studio
person, yes.
podcast chat?
Technically, it's supposed to be 7.5. There's some stops along the way. About 8 hours.
What?
Yes.
That's amazing.
Dedication. Love
That
it.
is dedication. And we did have a banger fun event last night to
It was fun.
connect you with all these amazing women
I
up
met
here.
so many amazing women last night.
Yes, that's what all this is about. Okay, we're going to get into it. Go ahead, Kate.
We always start off with this question of, were you born in Montana?
I was not. I was born in.
What?
I know. I implanted in here.
That's all right.
Sorry. I was born in Reno, Nevada, but at 2 years old, we moved down to Las Vegas. So Las Vegas is really all I know. And that's where I grew up until I left, which the military took me out of there.
Whoa. Okay, hold on.
And you were very close to your family growing up, right? It was,
It's a different dynamic.
yeah.
Yeah.
Now or then?
Both.
Oh.
I hear you on that.
Yes.
It always evolving. I do want to back up a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay, that would be a unique experience growing up in Las Vegas.
Yeah.
What was that like?
It was my normal, right? It's just interesting how most of my life I've gravitated towards chaotic environments.
Yeah.
And I think it stems from my childhood in that it was hot and
Hellish hot.
yeah, actually.
Yeah.
But Vegas wasn't really what it is today then. Now I don't feel like it's such a family orientated and celebrated place. Back then it was. Even on the strip we had things like Wet and Wild and then Circus was more brand new then.
Yeah.
So it was, and then the Treasure Island was not the TI, it was
Oh my
Treasure
gosh.
Island.
I love Treasure Island.
Yeah, and so those things, and there was a pirate show,
Yeah.
and then Wet and Wild was on the strip, and
Yes.
a huge water park, and all
Right.
these things. So we would all go hang out, and families were down there. And then at some point, it started to evolve into this adult playhouse, adult
Totally.
play city, Sin City.
Yeah, it is definitely Sin City. I love
And Wet and Wild, was that like a water park?
A huge water park.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You know what?
Sorry.
I
It
spent
made me
So
think of
many
the
summers there.
That's
Nice.
amazing. Yeah, that's now I look at it. It's
And
a
then
bummer.
it was on the strip, you're saying?
It was. It was on the strip.
Oh, wow.
I
Which
forget
is-
which hotel got built on top of it, but
Oh, wow.
yeah.
Okay, I got a fun note. My husband and I, so he goes to the Las Vegas big mining convention every year. And he hasn't gone the last couple of years, but anyway, side note. I remember he likes to stay in the shittiest places ever in Las Vegas. I'm not sleeping in the bed. I feel like there's bed bugs or some crazy shit. So we stayed, I think 2 weeks before, I think Circus got blown up, right? Didn't it get taken down to the ground?
I think one of the buildings that is
Whatever that was where we stayed, and it needed to happen. It
I
smelled
think I
like
know
smoke.
exactly which building you're talking about, and I have stayed there once before myself.
I was like, who stays in this shithole?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, so how close were you to the strip though, growing up?
Growing up, I was on the east side of Las Vegas towards Sunrise Mountain.
Okay.
And then when I became an adult, I lived in almost every area of Las Vegas.
Oh,
before
okay.
I moved,
Gotcha.
yeah.
So let's go into the fact that as a child and then becoming an adolescent, right? So early adolescence or whatnot. What made you decide to enlist?
I felt like I had no other option. That's
Really?
the short answer. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So I grew up in a single parent household. It was just my mom and then my sister who's 5 years younger than me. And it was my normal but chaotic. And my mom and I never really had an open communication relationship. And the things that I feel are imperative as a parent to talk to your children about, we never discussed, like the importance of school and how that can project you into your next chapter of your life as an adult. We never talked about drugs or alcohol or sex or anything.
Yeah.
And so I just navigated all of that on my own. And as you can imagine, I failed at a lot of them.
Of course. Yeah. If you have no guidance.
Right.
Yeah. It's like a luck of the draw.
My parents were like that too.
Yeah.
It was as if those subjects were like, we just don't talk about
taboo.
this.
Oh, you just hope your kid figures it out. And I'm like, that sounds like a recipe for disaster.
Totally.
And I've experienced the disaster.
Yeah.
So there I am, 17, senior in high school, getting ready to graduate and barely graduate.
Okay. Gotcha.
And it wasn't until then that I had realized the impact that your grades can have in getting you the hell out of wherever you want to be and just help you, right? And also the significance of maybe a family stature, which I also didn't have. I saw some of the kids who jacked off just as much as I did in school, but they came from prestigious families. So, you know, they just paid their way through college.
Yeah.
And I was at a point where I'm like, I don't have either of those options, but I want out of my mom's home. I need out of here. And I come from a veteran family. My grandfather served during 3 wars and made through. Yeah,
That's awesome.
He was recruited into, or not recruited, drafted into the Navy and then retired out of the Air Force, but survived through World War II, Korea, and Vietnam.
Wow.
Yeah. And so I knew that even though I was never old enough. He passed when I was 13 and I never got to hear those war stories. One of those things that I wish that I could do. And then my uncle was in Vietnam. And then I had several cousins. I'm one of the youngest of many cousins, over 20 cousins on my mom's side. And the majority of them, all of them but one, are male. Mm-hmm. And I think all but 2 of them went into the military.
Okay.
And so it wasn't a foreign thing. We have to remember timeline. This is June 2001.
Okay.
So my mom made this notation, oh, maybe you should go in the military. And at first I rejected it. I was like, that's nuts. No way. And then it settled with me a little bit. And I'm like, you know, it wouldn't necessarily be the worst thing. And at that time I was kind of wanting, I'm not really even sure exactly where the idea came from, but it was more of a subconscious want to work with the DEA and work in just anti-narcotics trafficking.
Yeah. Why? What was your thinking around that?
So we're going to go down all kinds of rabbit holes. I think I was raised in an environment where drugs were abused.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Got you. Yeah.
And I saw it firsthand, but no one talked about it. No one acknowledged it. Even today, my mother won't acknowledge what happened to like what I witnessed and endured as a child. And I think on a subconscious level, I just wanted a way to help or prevent or have some type of impact in that happening to other children or other people out there.
It creates quite a dynamic.
Yeah, it does.
Once it spreads and affects
Well, I
other
feel
people.
like too, I want to go a little bit offshoot here.
Yeah.
But sometimes it feels like for some people, it was just a normalized thing. Watch mom smoke a joint or do a line. That's very foreign to me. But then you bring in other parameters coming into play, other suspected weirdos coming in your house to do the deals. Mm-hmm. I can only imagine like that as a child watching that intuitively, instinctively, you can just sense this is not, something's evil or something's going on. Did you feel that way? Did you have those moments?
It was more the stepfather that I had.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
And the physical abuse that I endured.
Oh, I'm sorry, Dallas. That's terrible.
Yeah.
Okay, got you. Yeah. So then you said, you know what? I don't want anything to do with this. I want to go maybe in a career that has to do with stopping that bullshit.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I got you.
And I think this is all at a subconscious level at 17. I don't think I sat down and really strategically thought any of this out.
Yeah.
I knew I wanted out of my mom's house. And I guess I knew that I wanted to be impactful in that way. in a preventative way
Yeah.
that I could. So when I did some research, I realized in order to join the DEA, you needed two things, requirements. You needed a bachelor's degree. They don't care what it's in. They just want you to be educated. And two, you need real world experience. They won't hire you right out of college. They want you to go and be in local law enforcement or state law enforcement or something of that nature.
Okay.
Before they'll even consider your resume. So I thought to myself, the military will help me pay for her and get through college. And I ended up signing up to be a military police officer. So there's my real world experience.
Yes.
So two birds, one stone. I won't have any debt for college, and I'll be able to pursue my dream of joining the DEA. And by the time I'm 24.
Wow.
Did it all work out that lovely? I mean, that's a great plan.
Yeah.
There's a couple left and right turns, but
Of course.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
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 But when you have a plan, that always helps to like every day, okay, I'm getting through this to get to that point.
yeah.
Okay, so I want to back up. So this is June of 2001. So you joined then?
Yeah, at 17, my mom actually had to sign her parental rights over to the
Okay.
government. The government is now has basically ownership and
Ownership of
parental
you.
rights of me.
Okay, so June of that, but September 11th hits
that's
following
first
You're
round.
that.
already enlisted. Yeah.
Yeah, so you're already enlisted. So then where do you go from there?
Yeah. So when I joined, the military wasn't having an issue with people joining. So there was a delayed entry program, meaning all of the basic trainings were full and I was delayed to go to training until January. So I thought, okay, I'm enlisted. I have full benefits at this point. I can fit in a semester of college while I'm waiting to go to basic training. So that's what I did. And I was going to school, and then September 11th happened. And I remember waking up that morning and my radio alarm clock going off, because that's what we had then. And there was discussion about a building being on fire. But growing up in Vegas, they were building the stratosphere at that time, and it had already caught on fire a couple times during the construction of it. And so I thought that's what they were talking about. So I just shut my alarm off, went about my business, poured some cereal, turned on the TV. And of course, it didn't matter what station you turned on.
yeah.
It was being covered. And I realized, and I sat there, and it was immediate. I knew I was going to be a part of a war-driven military. I called my mom, talked to her. I'm like, I'm going to war. I said that, and she was like, no, you're not. And she, of course, she's freaking out from a mother's perspective. And I'm like, no, I'm going. And I actually had poli-sci that day, and I walked into class because I'm like, I don't know if class is canceled or what, but I walked in and the professor came in and he slammed his books on the table and he said a few words. I don't think anyone really listened, and then you dismissed class. And
I want to go just real quick because we're capturing a moment in time. And I think it's fascinating because I've asked everybody that's been through September 11th, 2001. Kate, do you remember that day pretty well as clearly as she did?
I do. Today's episode of the IWD406 Podcast is sponsored by Electric. Hey, this is Kate. Electric is my stage name when I'm a singer-songwriter. Okay, now that we've established this, we can move on. I've created a songwriting challenge for you to write your first song or your next one. To find out more about the Songs Inside You challenge, visit songsinsideyou.com today. We need lots of music in the world. Please write more songs. Yeah.
Where were you at?
I was in Vermont at my parents' camp at the lake.
Yeah.
And I was like, I have to make a life change.
Did you?
And then I moved out to Montana in November.
It seems, it seems like it was a very pivotal moment for most people.
Yeah.
And I know I was in my master's program at a university, and I just remember waking up and going, what the hell is going on? Like, why can't I not watch the Today Show? Because the Today Show is blowing up, and I was shifting. And I'm like, wow. It just, you can remember some of the littlest details on that day. I think that's really fascinating. For me, I'm not going to go to work, but I can't imagine for you knowing in that moment, you're already in the military, you're already in that, you're locked. You can't get out of it.
no.
Knowing in your head, fearful? Were you terrified? What was your thoughts?
I think my saving grace through not only that moment, but even moving forward into my deployment was the fact that I was so naive.
Okay, gotcha.
I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know what would be.
Yeah.
And so I think without having those expectations,
Right.
I didn't exceed or fail at those expectations.
And you probably also it kept fear. I'm assuming it would keep fear at bay a little bit. Just I don't know, so I'm like, there's not.
If you don't know what's coming,
you're
how,
just like,
how do
okay.
you? Yeah.
Well, and I think too, maybe at that point you were like, they're not going to throw me in the line of fire right away. You probably were. I'm not. Like I know of people during that time frame that went right to Fallujah.
Yeah.
Like they are going into the shit storm.
Well, and I think the other thing, there's this stigma still even today, but absolutely then that women don't go to combat.
Right.
Women,
that's
women aren't
interesting.
going to be shot at. You're not going to shot at the enemy. Yeah, you go through all this training because it's basic training. It's the foundation of training in the military. But I'm a woman, so I'm not going to endure any of that.
Right.
Is that what were your officers telling you that too, or
No,
was it just a feeling?
I mean, it was written in the regulations at that point.
Oh, okay.
Regulations
So it was
weren't changed until I think 2007 or 8.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So then you're really going in there more of like, I don't want to say this because this is going to sound not right, but you're going in from, I'm going to be an administrator. I'm going to do something with
support
supplies
mechanism.
or support, or you're never going to be there fighting. Right.
And even as a military police officer, so people immediately think, we call it a garrison unit. So that's like your traditional police duties that you would see our police in our communities do, right? And yes, we train and are prepared to operate under those job descriptions. But the other primary job role that military police officers fulfill is convoy security and EPW camps, and enemy prisoner of war.
Okay.
So then we transition into a prison guard type of role, and then convoy security. So anytime supplies are being moved from one area to another, they need beefed up security.
Okay.
Sometimes a lot of security.
Okay.
Military police officers are usually the ones that handle that.
And so basically you're surrounding the vehicle that's transporting it, making sure that everything, like there's no some sort of weird hijacking or takeover. That's pretty much what they're doing. Yeah. Okay. Were you a part of that, or were you part of the prison piece?
Both.
Wow. Okay. So did you start with the convoy type thing, or did you?
Our primary mission was the prison mission.
The prison mission. Okay.
But the thing is, where we were at the Abu Ghraib prison, the infamous prison.
No, I've never heard. What? Tell me about that.
So my unit came in, we established the prison, we rebuilt it, brought in prisoners of war. And when we left, the unit that came in and replaced us were involved in some very bad things. I'll just say that.
You're talking about waterboarding?
Oh, yeah.
I read this stuff. I think it's so fascinating.
There's a Netflix. No, I think it's on I'll have to get you. It's on something, and I will figure it out before I just throw it out there. But there's a whole documentary on what happened after we left.
Okay, I have to see that.
In your book, when you were prison guard, or is there a better word for that? Like you were guarding
corrections.
Corrections. Okay. I couldn't quite put the picture in my head. So if you could help me out, because you would describe a tent, and then there's walls around it. So I didn't know if it was open yard with tents, and then having a wall
passed
around
through
it.
a town that has an old prison here, and it's like big, tall, 10-foot cobblestone type of walls and watchtowers on each corner, and then halfway down the wall, and old like cedar block type of buildings. Like that's what the prison there. So we occupied an abandoned prison that Saddam Hussein ran.
Okay, that's what I was wondering. Okay, interesting. Wow.
But the prison there were aspects of it that had been blown up. All the electricity was down, the plumbing was down. So when we went in, we lived in one of the warehouses in the prison, just a big abandoned warehouse.
Okay.
And then we built with concertina wire, which is that big round razor wire. We built a prison camp that you might see in one of those old war movies or shows in the yard of this prison. And that's where we first started taking in prisoners before they had engineers come in and actually rebuild the prison and establish electricity and water again.
You were there before that.
All of that, yeah.
Holy buckets. What? I mean, I can't even imagine as a woman having it's this.
Or even being 18, or were you still 17 at the time?
I
being
was
young,
19 when we were there.
19.
And not having any of that, like just not even having the creature comforts that like a clean bathroom. I don't know how I would do it.
No, we didn't. I didn't shower for about 5 months.
What?
Yeah. Baby wipes are your best friend.
Holy bucket. So when people complain about little things that their toilet paper ran out or something crazy like that, they don't know really what it's like roughing it.
No.
Holy bucket. That's insane to me. Okay, so you were there for how long?
It was about 7.5 months in country in Iraq.
And then, okay, so what was it? I just want to know. It can't be where you're like on vacation, sleeping in a nice warm bed and not hearing things going off, where there are lots of bombs and all sorts of things going off. And
mortars.
Okay. So all that's going on around you. I can't imagine, were you noticing things in that moment of little micro incidences of a PTSD backlash?
No, not while I was there.
Not while you're in survival mode there.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And you're witnessing these prisoners come in and you're seeing horrific things. Obviously, now that we know there was a documentary post after
that
all
all
this.
happened after we left, though. So I didn't see any of that.
You didn't see any of those
No.
incidences. Okay. So then how then at that point, do they give you only a certain amount of time where you're there and then they're like, we need to transition? Do they rotate people after a certain period of time, or do people stay there for a long period of time?
Typically, a unit should only be deployed overseas for 12 months.
Okay.
But that also includes any training and out processing.
Okay.
So like we were training in Fort Lewis, Washington from January to April, the end of April, early May,
Okay.
preparing for a mission. And then we flew into Kuwait. We were in Kuwait for about a week. I was only in Kuwait for about a week. The rest of my company was there for about 2 weeks. I was part of an advance party to go up and start scouting and preparing for the rest of the company to come. And then when we transitioned out of Iraq, we were in Kuwait for about 2 or 3 weeks because you have to clean all of your equipment and pack it all up in Connexes and make sure it gets put on the ship to go home before you can get on a plane and go home. And then we flew back into Fort Lewis, Washington, and they allowed us to go home. We flew back home the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. And so they allowed us to go home for Thanksgiving. And then we're back in Fort Lewis for a couple of weeks to out process.
What's out processing part? What's that?
It's not what it should be.
I want to know.
It just makes it sound like, okay, you're all done. Here's some paperwork.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
You're not far off. And that's the problem. Honestly, that's one of the bigger problems with veterans who come home from deployments and why they're having so many challenges around their mental health. In my opinion, that there isn't a more robust out process. So yes, they literally get out a piece of paper, and in the military, it's a lot of times it's a go or no go status. You'll just hear, are you a go or a no go?
Okay, what does that mean?
Go mean?
It just means
go for another.
No, just like you go
tour,
through a checklist. Okay, are you having nightmares? Go or no go? It's just yes or no.
Oh.
Okay, so I'm a little slow to the game. So let's back up a little bit. So
we've been all over the place.
Sorry. Okay, so I just want to
All
make
over
sure.
the world.
Yeah. Okay, so they take you from Kuwait and they bring you back to the States, and then you have to do all the things that you have to do to make sure all your guns, everything are back
Cleaned
in the back in the army.
Right.
And then they say, "Thank you, goodbye. Here, sign this document." And basically the document is just like a checklist of, how do you feel? Do you feel okay? Check yes or no. Is it pretty much that? Is the out processing?
As silly as it sounds, yes.
Holy crap. What? That's
At
what
least
they
that's
do?
how it was at the
And they
end
don't
of
have
2003.
any mental health provider there checking on you, making sure, looking at your pupils, doing all the things that you would do for PTSD.
No, and I might have, that period of my life was very blurry. I don't really remember a lot of that part in detail. So I may have talked to miscellaneous doctors, but I did find an old sheet, and I wish I would have brought it or had a picture of it, but it literally says out processing. And on the side, there's just 2 checkboxes, go, no go. And I read through it, and there were many checkboxes that were marked go that should have been no-go. I should have been referred to a psychologist. I should have been referred.
Okay, that's what that means.
To this,
so
that,
go
and the other.
means I'm letting
It's
you
just
go.
you're passing. You're just like, pass, get out of my office.
Okay. And then no go is I'm not right. I need help.
Yeah. And I mean, it could be anything. Like, did you turn in your equipment? Go or no go. Oh, are you having nightmares? Go or no go.
Wow. My thinking is like, I'm just looking at it from the standpoint of that little stupid ass sheet they give you when you're postpartum and you just birthed a ball out of your body and then you're going through the emotional drama, and then you go to the OBGYN office postpartum 2 weeks later, 6 weeks later, and it's, do you feel depressed? Check yes or no. I'm like, what does that even mean? I don't even know what that even means. That's what that was.
A perfect parallel.
Yes.
A perfect parallel.
Yeah.
Any mother who's been through that will understand exactly what it was like for me to outprocess in the military with that analogy.
Buckets.
Yeah.
So you said go.
I didn't say go. Whoever was doing the documentation said go.
Go. And then you went back. You're in the States now, and you go back to your life. What was that like?
I remember there's a couple things that I remember, and I actually don't know if I remember them or if I just remember my mom telling me them. You know, that type of situation.
At this point, you're disassociated. Okay, got you.
So I know there's one instance, and I don't remember exactly how long after my return home, but I was staying with my mom, and I basically didn't leave her side. I didn't want to be alone. My sleep schedule was jacked up. You'd think after being sleep deprived for so long, I would just knock out for several days, but I couldn't. I didn't sleep. Honestly, weirdly enough, it was too quiet. I'd have to turn on the TV and crank it up loud.
Well, can I ask you, while you were there, sleep is very important to me. I'm just going to state that.
Well, okay, don't get deployed.
I don't think I could do it. And especially in the conditions that you were in.
Yeah.
Does the military give you medications to help you sleep? Because there's no way anybody could sleep in those type of circumstances.
No, not there. Matter of fact, if they give you any medication, they take your weapons away from you, and you don't want that. You're literally in a combat environment, and you don't have, I will run you through a typical day in the first 2 months that I was there. I worked a 12-hour shift on a tower or in the yard guarding the prisoners on some flavor. And then we would run tasks, whether that was helping to beef up the yard, like laying concertina wire. I pounded T-posts and laid concertina wire for the first couple of weeks I was there. And then you'd get in a Humvee and run convoy security or help to go get supplies. And then you'd get some baby wipes and wash off, and you'd take about a 2 to 3 hour nap, and then you'd start your day over again.
Wow. How do you eat? This is the thing I don't, you're 17, 19. Okay. Me, I'm thinking to myself, yeah, I could probably function brain-wise for a certain period of time at 19 years old, because you're still in that mental drive, right, state. And as you age, it wears down. But my thinking is, I couldn't do that for a 7 month period. And I asked a Navy SEAL this one time. I said, how do you, when you're in these these combat missions, they tell us we have to sleep. So whether it be a 30-minute or an hour, you have to sleep. I go, do they train you or teach you on how to do that? Shut your brain down. He's no, they don't do that. You just you learn to do it.
Yeah.
But how do you stay awake at the same point too? Because I could fall asleep and be like, if I'm tired, I'm just going to curl up in the corner.
I think it's
adrenaline.
Adrenaline.
Your dopamine.
There's something else.
Yeah.
But exhaust your body.
Yeah,
though.
absolutely.
Wow.
And it's interesting. You've read the book. Maybe you remember the first night that I stayed at the prison, and I was annoyed by the gunfire in the background that I put my earplugs in. And I think back to that, and I'm like, Dallas, you were so dumb. And I think
there was lots of mortars.
Is
that the right word? But there was lots of things going off all the time.
But I was annoyed by the gunfire, so I put earplugs in a combat zone.
And you had
in a new place that we had just moved in. We're sleeping in an alleyway between 2 buildings, and we have no idea what is around us. We didn't do any recon or anything. We didn't know what the enemy threat was, and I decided to put earplugs in. I'm like, I think back, I'm like, Dallas, what if someone would have came in, just been like, I'm sleeping, leave me alone.
That's interesting though. Yeah.
Naive.
So it just seems like you're just always on hyper alert.
Yeah,
or just like I'm safe to sleep here. I'll take a rest.
Yeah.
But just always hyper.
But I'm also thinking your body is now getting programmed, essentially.
Yeah.
Where you're like, this is my only moment to sleep. I'm popping the earplugs in.
And like when you first had children, right?
Yes.
You could sleep. It's very similar to that. What a parallel.
Yes.
You could sleep through anything and everything, but the minute your child made any type of coup, you're awake.
Yes. Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
So it's like that, but I just programmed myself for like gunfire or footsteps that sounded like strangers.
Wow. Yeah.
I laugh, but it's really not funny.
Okay. So let's go back to moving moving and transitioning back into civilian life.
Yeah.
So you're back and you shared that day, and then you get back to normalcy, and you've also haven't addressed the hypervigilance that you're already created because your body now is programmed in hypervigilance, right? So how do you shift back into not every little thing or even sounds that's in your environment? How do you shift from being on high alert to I'm safe, I'm relaxed?
I don't think I'm there still.
Okay.
Really?
Interesting.
I think it's a lot less, but there are still things that trigger me for sure.
Okay.
Balloon pops. I hate fireworks. And the 4th of July is my least favorite holiday, not because of what it is, but because of the 2 weeks leading up to it.
Yeah.
The assholes out there blowing off fireworks at 9:30 at night on June 29th. So I'm still hypervigilant in these ways. Someone knocking on my door at 7:30 p.m. when I'm not expecting anybody. And I have to just remind myself that I am home and I am safe. It's a mantra that I practice, and helping to reprogram my brain on the reality of the now. But when I first came home, no, it was high alert all the time.
Yeah. Did you, as a woman, okay, so this kind of goes into parallel with a person that is struggling. And I personally know, I remember after my third kid was born, I walked into and she had massive colic and she was awful. I love you, Charlie, but you were awful. And I remember thinking, I've got 2 little kids still in diapers, and then I got this baby that's just demanding. And I go into the doctor's office and she was like, you seem there's something bothering you. And then when she phrased it that way, I was like, fuck you. I'm not going to tell you what's bothering me. But at the depths, I didn't want to admit I was freaking stressed and depressed.
Because then you're a bad mom.
I'm a bad mom for being irritated with all of my kids.
God forbid you're sleep deprived and malnutritioned and at the mercy of 3 children.
Exactly. Yeah. So then I'm assuming that at some point the military would follow up with you 6 months out and say, hey, how are you doing still? None of that. So then at this point, you had to have had some sort of interaction with the physician or doctor. Did you go in and go, I need your help?
So I thought about it.
You thought about it. Okay. How often does that happen for women coming out of combat?
That they think about it?
They think about it.
Probably a lot.
But do they act upon it? I would like to know those studies.
Most probably not.
Okay,
and
gotcha.
That's just based on the women that I've talked to and who've shared their stories with.
Yeah.
But I'll say for me, 6 months into it, I definitely thought I need some help. But I was also witnessing people who were getting help, getting their security clearances ripped away from them after being diagnosed with PTSD.
Can you explain what that means, the security clearance?
So I hold a top secret security clearance still today.
Okay.
And it allows me to have the certain jobs that I have, access to certain data that I have, walk into certain buildings that I'm allowed to. Okay. And once you're declassed or once your security clearance is revoked from you, it's like a scarlet letter. And so career-wise, it can be detrimental to your career. And as I was watching this and then remember what my career goals were, working for a federal agency.
Okay.
Yep. So you need the
I was scared to talk to anyone. So I just stuffed it all into a big black box and locked it away with a key.
Does that regulation still exist?
No, they banned it. And I don't remember exactly when, but it was a couple years after I'd already got out of the military.
How did you find ways to heal or deal?
Avoidance.
Okay.
Yeah.
If I'm going to be honest, it was avoidance.
Just like put it in the files way back in your head.
Oh,
and
yeah.
just like,
you're a
I
stuffer.
see what
I'm a stuffer.
in front of me,
and a hoarder.
I keep going.
Yep. I just put it in the black box.
I don't see the big elephant in the room.
Nope.
Okay.
Avoidance. I do it.
Okay.
I still do it today with other things.
Yeah.
But I'm aware of it now.
Yeah.
Good.
I'm working through a lot of it and I try to acknowledge it rather than avoid it.
Yeah.
But it's hard, when you have a lot of other things going on and you're a mom and you want to save face for your kid, or you have a career or you have friends, like you don't want to mope around necessarily all the time, but it's something I've tried to work on and balance, and especially in the last 2 years of my life, in being like, you know what, these are my feelings and they're valid and it's okay to feel all the feels.
Yeah.
And I actually feel better when I discuss them and exert them and just get them out versus hoarding them in. Because what I have found especially is that when we hold on to all of these things, it's like a cancer, right? No one can see it on the inside, but it starts festering and growing.
Yes.
And eventually it will erupt. Like it's just a matter of time.
Yeah.
You can't stuff it away forever.
No, and I want to make a really important point on this because I think women, this is why I feel like it's so important for women to have tribes. And I think it's so important for women to show up and say, you know what? I know you're having a party, but I feel like shit today. And I'm going to sit here on the couch and I'm not going to say a word unless somebody comes up and goes, hey, you know what? Do you want to talk? Kind of thing. But when does that freaking happen? I'm being honest. When do you ever see that happening, right? You're having a party, someone gets together and we're all sitting on a couch and you can just tell that one person has an energetic vibe to them that's just a little off. Like
that depends on trust. It would have to be, it has to be trust.
Yes.
To say,
And who your tribe is.
Yeah.
Who your tribe is.
Yeah.
And who you allow in, because it's a two-way street.
Yes.
True.
Are you courageous enough to approach that friend and say, hey, something's off with you. Do you want to talk about it? And is that person courageous enough to be truthful with that friend and say, no, I'm not okay? And it can go either way, right? You can say, no, I'm not okay. And you can say, no, I don't want to talk about it.
It's true.
But just sit with me.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you don't want to talk about it. But just having that energy next to you, having that physical connection can be healing in itself.
Absolutely.
Sometimes with feelings, I find that if you ask me what's wrong, I can't even articulate.
You don't know how to explain it.
Have so many things going with me. I just need a little quiet time in my mind to filter things through and
see,
really
that's not me. My husband has a couch in the garage and he is my husband is very, and just saying this because I trust him, obviously, but I'll go into the room and he looks at me and I'm like, I have this look on my face. I'm like, I'm sitting on the couch and I'm going to bitch. And I feel
the bitch couch.
It's the bitch couch. And
I need one of those.
I feel like maybe we need to create that and have that when we go into a group of women and be like, can I just have the floor to bitch for a bit? And be okay with it.
And in those moments, we don't necessarily even want feedback.
No,
we just
want
need
to get
to
it out.
exert it.
It's the
we want to be. We
it's
want
the
to be
listening.
felt. We want to feel heard.
Yes.
And understood.
Yeah. And I don't. And so the great thing with my husband and I love that I've got my core friends that are like, I'm like, this is a listening moment. I just need you to listen to me. You don't need to process and like hyper analyze what I'm trying to say. Matt, my husband, will literally go, do I need to say anything or is this a listening moment? And I'm like, it's a
Good for
listening
him.
moment. Yeah, he's learned, but it's 20 years, girl.
Yeah.
We're 20 years deep into this. We had to work some shit out. But yeah, I think we need to have more of these discussions because we as women want to figure out how to help and fix.
Yeah.
And for what you've experienced and the fact that no one's probably, there's a small percentage of the population that has experienced what you've experienced at that level of trauma, right? To try to find an equated value to that is probably pretty difficult. And I'm assuming on the back end of coming back to civilian life, that processing piece is, I don't really know what the fuck how to process this. So I'm gonna disassociate and I'm just gonna go numb.
Yep.
Do you see that a lot with women where they just go into a numbing state because they don't really know? They've seen this shitstorm. They were part of this thing. They had to dwell and live and survive. And they come over and then they're like, I don't know what just happened to me. Now I'm just going to go deep into a numbing state. And maybe, is there a lot of chemical dependency that comes into play? And yes, I just wanted to touch point on that. Does that happen? Have you seen that?
Yeah.
Okay.
And if it's not by direction of physicians who are handing out pills like candy, it's at their own self-medication of alcohol and recreational drugs.
Holy crap.
Yeah.
Okay, let's get into, I want to talk about your book.
Okay. We've already been talking.
Let's do it. I'm going to hand it to you real quick. Okay.
Got it.
What I thought the format of it was pretty cool was the fact that you have these, and this is from your diary. So what I'm referencing
that's the
to
original.
Oh, sweet. We got to get a picture of that. What we're referencing is Dallas wrote a book called Shattered Reflections, A Female Soldier's Unveiled Truth. So, and you can buy this on Amazon and Barnes & Noble, correct?
It's at a the Bozeman Barnes and Noble.
Okay.
We're still working on all of that.
Okay.
Or my website, notsoaveragejane.com.
Okay. So, and can you talk to our listeners about the way that you structured this book? Where did how did you create this book? About your journal.
So the book is actually the raw contents in its raw form of the journal that I kept during my deployment in Iraq.
So you were there and you kept a journal. Were you a journaler before?
No, gosh, no.
Did someone encourage you to do that?
Literally the day I'm leaving, getting ready to go on the plane, my best friend lived in Seattle. And so we're at Fort Lewis, Washington, which is right outside of Seattle. She comes to say goodbye to me and she hands me this journal. And I'm like, what the hell is this? Thanks. Like, how about a bottle of whiskey to take with me?
Yes.
And she said to write your stuff and things down in. And I was like, okay. Never a journaler, never a diary. I'm more of the person that's feeling a certain way and I just need to get it out and I don't have anyone to talk to. So I just like drunk write, just blah, projectile vomit onto a piece of paper, right? So I do that still to this day, but it's hit and miss. There's no like consistency in it at all. I could do it like every day and then go 3 years without ever writing anything down that I'm feeling. But I had this journal and there was some of the downtime or when you were like, okay, I do need to get some sleep. I have a 3-hour window to get some rest, but your mind's going 100 miles a minute or you're missing your mom or your family or your dog, your horse, whatever, like you're just like trying to live back where you were and you're having FOMO of what's going on back home, just all the things your mind is just racing. It was an outlet for me to just talk to somebody, which was a piece of paper, about what I was going through or what I had experienced or how I was feeling, my frustrations, because, you know, I'm a lower ranking enlisted person. So voicing your frustrations basically only got you in trouble. And the military is huge on associating emotions and feelings with weaknesses. So it was a way to be able to put that down in some way. And so I did. I didn't necessarily write in it every day. And I would go a couple days, or I don't think I went much more than maybe a week at a time without writing in it. And then it would be a long entry and I'd update you. But I tried to write in it regularly.
Okay. So then in your book, you went back and did some self-analysis work.
Yeah.
So journaling self-analysis work is a real important piece. And what I love and what the listeners and the readers will know about your book is that you basically analyzed each entry, correct, at the bottom. And I thought that was really great. Either it's 1 or 2 words or a little bit of a sentence, it's a paragraph. And I think that's important. So out of all of your journal, was there anything that just struck at your heart? Was there one entry that you're like, dang, this has a lot of deeper roots to it?
It wasn't necessarily one entry, but I watched the 19-year-old version of myself slowly become emotionally unavailable and closed off.
Okay, got you.
I started to desensitize to things that I should have been emotional about, I should have been disturbed about. And I would go from talking about almost getting my head blown off to I wonder what chow is tonight.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And so just going from one sentence to another like it was no big deal.
So there's no sense of probably from your childhood, seeing drug use, seeing things that happen. That is how you dealt with, it's just not deal, right?
Yeah.
It's just detach from my emotions, just move on to the next thing.
Yeah.
So that space and time and that emotional impact just became part of your MO and you store those emotions, right? Deep in your story. Did it manifest later on?
1,000% in
How
so
did it
many different
manifest?
ways.
Okay, talk to us about
A lot of the decisions that I've made throughout my adult life, one thing, and I literally was doing it last night where I was talking about it, I should say, where I commonly say, I've ate worse. I've slept in worse places. I've experienced worse.
Right.
But that bar, that norm of my worst is so ridiculously low that even just one little step above that norm was improvement in my experience, in my opinion, even though it was horrible to what should have been norm. Like my bar should have been, at 0, we'll just say 0. But my norm, what I had experienced was at like a -10. So even if something came in and it was a -8, it was still better than the worst that I had experienced. And so I saw that transcribed through mostly the relationships that I would find myself in throughout my adult life.
Got you. Yeah. Because you're probably at the depths of who you are, a pretty positive person. You're seeking positive attributes. Is that correct?
Yes.
So you lean more towards the glass is half full, which, to be honest with you, Dallas, I can see that as being a real protective benefit for what you've experienced. Because if you have that natural propensity to be more in that melancholic state and be more, gosh, everything's going so bad, I can't imagine you being where you're at today.
Right.
So I think that's a wonderful quality that you were given. Seriously, that's awesome. So taking this book and then this journal years later.
Yeah, 20 years later.
It took you 20 years later to go back to it.
To read it. I haven't touched it. I haven't touched it. Every once in a while, I get a wild hair up my ass. I'd be like, today is August 8th.
Oh.
Let's see what happened on August 8th.
Note to self.
22 years ago.
We need to have a journal party where we all go back and look at journals.
Sometimes it just puts you right back in there.
That's true.
And it's like, did I want to do that?
You look at it that way? See,
I do, because I think relate right to the emotion that was there.
Oh,
rather than just the words.
Wow.
Yeah.
And here's August 8th. And so I would open it up and I'd read it. And the majority of the time I would slam it shut. And I'd be like, that was a dumb decision. Because I'd be mad or start to feel the emotion that I denied myself all those years ago. And I sure as hell wasn't ready to feel it now. And then I just put it away on the shelf and it would collect dust for another few years.
Wow. So then what made you decide to take it and put it into a book?
My healing journey.
There you go.
Good.
And let's dive into that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So October 2021, I'm at basically the lowest of my lows I've ever been in my life. I get out of a really bad toxic relationship and I self-isolate for about 6 months. And so we're talking now June of 2022. I have this epiphany. I need people around me. I need to get out of this deep, dark hole. I feel horrible. I am only literally thriving for the sake of my children. And by thriving, I mean surviving at that point. And so I went searching for people, but I also knew that these people needed to be women. And I wanted strong, inspirational, motivating women to be around. I felt it, I craved it. So I went scrolling on Facebook to find women's networking groups. And I found one in Billings and eventually made it to one of these groups. And it was another monumental moment in my mind that I can remember every detail. And I sat there in the middle of a room of about 25 powerhouse women. And at one point in the evening, everyone goes around and shares a little bit about themselves, right? It's a 2-minute spiel on, hey, I'm Dallas and I'm the executive of this and this is how you could help me and I'd love how to help you. And then it comes to my turn. Mind you, I'd sat myself in the middle of this room and I'm already looking for exit. I'm like, God, why did I sit here? I need to bounce. I need out of here. And so it comes around to me and I stand up and I'm like, listen, I am a mouthful. And I would appreciate it very much, even though you're just now meeting me, if you could just hang on for a moment with me. Oh. And then I bawled my eyes out and professed to these women basically what I had been enduring for over the last few years in my marriage and how I had fallen apart and how I had been suicidal and how I was desperately needing connection at that point.
Oh, wow, Dallas.
Yeah. That night, I met some of my best friends that I have now, my holistic therapist, my financial advisor, so many women who are such a huge, important aspect of my life today. But that night, I met my therapist, and I don't know why, but I was so drawn to her. And I approached her after my whole spiel, and I said, I really want to know more about what you do. And she said, yeah, let's grab coffee. And we grabbed coffee within days of each other. And she explained her holistic approach and all the things. And I basically told her I had tried everything I could by that point. And I was so broken that I was willing to try anything. And on June 27th, yes, I know the day, I had my first appointment with her.
Yeah.
We celebrate it. We actually go to dinner now and have our anniversary dinner.
Nice.
I love that.
Yeah, it's something to be celebrated. It's a special day for me. But she explains it best. And she says, I came in her office and she had a couch and I just collapsed on the couch and I was so open, just like my arms were open. My body posture was just open. And she just remembers thinking, gosh, she's so broken, but she's so open to opportunity right now.
That's the best client.
Yeah, that's what she said.
The best client.
And my 1 hour session turned into 2 hours, and we went way deeper than she ever thought that we were going to be able on an initial session. Yeah. And I've been hooked ever since. I see her regularly still today.
Good.
And so at one point, so we start peeling back these layers of, okay, great, toxic relationship. Okay, let's deal with that. Okay, this, that, and the other, let's deal with that. And then I came face to face with my military deployment and career. And that was like Pandora's box. And so I made the suggestion that maybe I should just go through it and read it and relive it. And she said, yeah, if that's what you feel is best. Now, sidebar, rewind 9 years prior. And I know you want to talk about transitioning. I don't know if we're going to have time. But when I made the transition into corporate America, I was struggling and I had a mentor come to me and he was a Vietnam veteran. And so just our getting to know each other, he learned about my deployment and that I had kept this journal. I don't know why it came up, but he planted this seed deep down in my subconscious of, oh yeah, you should publish that journal. Now he had a hobby at that time of a publishing company, which hindsight ended up being who I published my book through.
Oh, cool.
Nice.
That's awesome. Yeah.
So it came full circle, but that was 9 years prior. And then so now I'm actually going through the journal, but I think that seed that he planted started to grow root. And so subconsciously I was like, if I'm going to read it, I might as well kill two birds with one stone and transcribe it to a digital copy as well. Also, what I didn't really realize the impact it would have until later is that the way I chose to do it is I opened up my iPad, I did voice to text, and I would open it and I would read it out loud.
Oh, that's even
So if
more
you've ever said
powerful,
anything
though.
out loud,
Oh,
the impact that has.
Oh, yeah.
So it took me 6 months to get through 89 journal entries.
Yeah.
And I quit once, took a 2-week vacation from it, had Heather, my therapist, help me through it. She ended up having to read that journal entry to me, but I got through it. And then when I got to the end, I had felt such a relief that I didn't even know was capable. It was like, you didn't even know you were carrying a backpack full of bricks. And then I took that backpack off and I was like, oh, wait.
Yeah.
Okay. But you've been carrying it so long that it just became a part of your being. So that sensation that I felt, I thought there got to be other people out there that feel this way.
Right.
And if I could be some type of ripple effect, oh, look, I did it, or I talked about it, or here I am being vulnerable, maybe it would motivate others to either start or continue on their healing journey too. So that was the initial motivation of publishing the book and putting it out there.
Okay.
Plus, I was like, I went searching for women's perspectives of experiencing combat firsthand, and I couldn't find anything. There's books written by women about women. There's books written about women by other people, but not this firsthand encounter, let alone a memoir, a journal that was kept by a 19-year-old girl in combat. I thought that perspective could help in a variety of ways, and that proved true as people have reviewed the book online or contacted me personally and shared how the book helped them or impacted them or gave them insight and perspective. And so that was amazing, and it still continues to do, but I felt like that wasn't enough. And so almost instantly I launched the podcast because I thought, okay, being heard, feeling like I was being heard with my book being out there gave me some validity that I didn't even know that I was seeking.
Right. Yeah.
And
And you gave a voice for other women to share their stories.
yeah, but I wanted these women to share their own stories.
Well, I also feel like you got a taste of the bug of healing. Women
Yeah.
just carry this weight of just massive trauma for whatever that looks like, and pain, and it just trickles out in their world and their friends and family
Or
and
nurtures.
little tiny little microaggressions, right? And then at some point you just break And then you're like, oh God, can you help me? And then this situation happened for you where it's, wow, I can get relief. I can stop holding all this shit that I feel inside. And then once you see the light of, yeah, I do feel better. Because you probably instantly from that June 26th, 27th moment, you were like, oh, I can start to breathe better.
Yes.
I can breathe deeper. So then now you're like, why can't other people have that? So now you've got that, I want to give it to other people because you're a glass half full person. I can make this happen. So the book is healing. And then now you created an organization and a podcast that brings those opportunities. You saw there's a niche there.
Yeah.
That's not helping. There's no help in that realm for women, combat veteran women, right?
Right.
So let's go into that. What does your organization and podcast hope to bring for women?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the podcast it's a voice.
It's a voice.
And it's education for the listeners.
Yes.
And perspective and insight.
Okay.
But the women we play by their rules. We talk about what they want to talk about. They share what they want to share.
I love that.
And I'm very respectful of what they don't want to discuss. I always ask them up front, are there any
So you're creating
no-go
safety.
topics?
Yeah, you're creating that safe, sacred space. Got it. Okay.
And the wild thing is all of the women that have been on the podcast thus far, I didn't know before finding them on social media.
Oh,
that's nice.
cool. I love that.
Yeah, good old hashtag female combat veteran. We'll find you some. So, and most of them on TikTok. And so I would contact them. I would give just a couple spiels about who I am. Like, hey, I'm Dallas. I'm a combat veteran, OIF 03, just because they would know. And I'm like, here's a link to my website. You can learn more about me and what I'm doing, but I would really love to have you as a guest on my podcast.
Yeah.
And feel free to reach out to me. I think I've only had 2 say no, and it wasn't a no, it was a not right now.
Okay.
And one of those 2 has come back recently and said, my therapist and I both think that this would be really great for me.
Oh,
that's a
yay.
great
Good
turnout.
job. I love that. I love that. Good.
So they've come and they share, and I learned a couple of things during that process. One, I could see visually because we're on Zoom. I haven't done one in person yet, but we're on Zoom, but I could see them start to sit up a little taller
Yes.
and breathe a little deeper and to just feel heard and give them that safe haven, that space.
Yes.
But also for me, it was also healing me deeper.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't even realize, like, I would get off sometimes and be so emotional. And my therapist would be like, okay, you have to protect your energy too, because you can't take on everything that they are throwing at you. She's like, I know you want to help them, but we have to figure out other ways to do.
I also look at that as an opportunity of whatever is, there's always a little bit of a mirror being held up in front of us. So there's probably a little part of you that's, maybe it's just a little nugget that I just need to put in my forefront of my mind to go, maybe that's something I can look at on occasion and go, do I need to address that?
Anything that you resonate with, right? You should be aware of.
Absolutely.
And then ask, why do I resonate with that?
But whether or not it's just taking you down, yes, you want to make sure you're, okay, maybe that's something I need to dive deeper into for my own personal safety, right? And emotional health. But sometimes we do as women, when we're together, we all energetically entangle. So I do understand, like when we're all in the room, I'm like, like I just feel it. And I don't think it's always necessarily a bad thing to feel it that deep.
No.
So it's wonderful that you're giving this opportunity for women to feel it.
Yeah.
So keep doing it.
And then you've taken it a step further with your retreat. You want to talk about that? Because that's
so
a really
through
amazing
this
thing
process, I'm about 4 episodes in. We just hit stop recording on an episode. And we're talking about, because again, I'm like, I need to help these. Like, they're coming, they're pouring their hearts out to me. And then I'm just like, all right, high five, thanks, bye. And I'm like, I can't do that. Like, my first intention was to build this robust resources page on my website and be like, okay, here's all these amazing things that you can go to. And so we're chatting and she's, yeah, I have this spreadsheet full of about 100 veteran recreational and retreats that are free for the most part to veterans. And I'm like, oh, send it to me. I'm going to put that on the website where I'm going to call and talk to them. That way I can make referrals. Like maybe I'll go to a few myself. I was excited. And then I get the spreadsheet and I got very not excited.
Oh, why?
Yeah,
because,
tell us about
okay,
what
so
you
a couple
saw.
things here. So what I see is all of these events or recreational activities and retreats, and it's mostly elk hunts and archery camps and fly fishing experiences and
I was gonna
man
say,
shit.
lots of dude stuff, although I do a few of those things.
Listen,
Right,
women
right.
love these
Yes,
things,
yes.
but here's the important factor.
Yes.
I'm talking to these women on the podcast. I have other veterans that are approaching me and sharing their story with me just personally. And what I'm hearing over and over again is not only that they have a loss of a sense of worthiness and they don't feel valid and they don't feel heard and they feel alone, but they have a loss of their sense of femininity.
Oh, yeah, I can see that.
So there's piece number one on why I'm frustrated with this list I'm looking at. Piece number two is 90% of the women that I have spoke to that have shared their stories with me have experienced some form of military sexual trauma.
So
Wow.
they don't want to be in a retreat with men.
Yeah, that would make sense.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
So you take
Yeah.
those two key pieces that they've lost their sense of femininity and a vast majority of them have experienced military sexual trauma. They're not going to go to these retreats. And so I started calling them. How many women come through your program? How many combat veteran women come through your program? Average answer 1 to 3%.
Ooh, that's bad. Yeah, that's bad. There's definitely a need. For sure.
So
yeah.
it made sense. It made sense to me. I understood why. And I talked to these women. Why wouldn't you go to that? It's ran by men. I don't want to be ran. Or they have men that go too. I had a mother share with me. She lost her daughter to her daughter's battle with PTSD. One of her last efforts to go to a retreat and get some help was in Sheridan, Wyoming. And she was raped there.
Oh my gosh. Really?
So
wow.
these are real things
Yeah.
that like women don't want to go. And so I basically at that point said, screw it, I'll do it myself. And this was November. So I book in September, podcast October, late November. I'm
You're
like,
on
screw
an
it, I'm doing it
awesome
myself.
train. Like, rock it up,
Yes.
baby.
I'm just, at this point, I just feel like I'm taking orders from
Hold
the
on.
man up above and just marching in place.
I think it's interesting. She's on fire and she's wearing red.
Yes.
That's my color.
That's your signature color. That is amazing. That is amazing.
Yeah.
Dallas, you
are filling a need.
You're
so
filling a
thank
need.
you.
Yes. And thank you. Thank you for everything. Like your service, what you've gone through. We have to say more of that to these women for your impact. It's unbelievable. I do want to ask you one question before we transition to our last amazing little fun little questions that we'll slang at you.
Yes, fun. We'll use that adjective.
What do you think is some of the key things for self-empowerment? Resilience.
For
Good.
sure.
Yeah.
And I think that comes with resourcefulness. At least that's what it does for me.
Okay.
I always just try and always find a way.
Yeah.
And a lot of times people get like anxious when they plan something out and then it doesn't go as planned. But I feel like if you can be resourceful in those moments and just figure out, okay, there's a trail that leads me over here and I might have to jump over a tree and climb over a bridge and swim through a lake, but I'm going to get back onto that path. If you can keep that perspective and hope and inspiration, and then also have a tribe around you that is encouraging you and feeling that as well, because you can't do it on your own.
No.
You can't do any of these things on your own. People, especially military, they are like, oh, I can do this myself. I don't need help. Like I'm the one, I will raise my hand, who's outside putting Christmas lights up, who doesn't have a ladder and tells my neighbor I don't need to borrow theirs, with a table and an ice chest stopped on top of the table and a chair stacked on top of the ice chest and wiggling, getting ready to about break my leg.
Yeah.
So I get it. The resilience of just, you know what, I've gone through this. Where's the lesson in it? What can I learn from it? How do I grow and not go through this again, or at least try not to? Or if it comes at me, I know how to handle it better.
Great. I love that. I love that.
Very good.
Okay, Dallas, we're going to transition into our last three questions. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and ask the first one, or do you want to go for it?
You can go ahead.
Okay. So the first one is, if you could only have 3 things on your life bucket list, what would they be?
This was so hard for me.
Okay.
So I decided, I'm like, okay, I'll show her.
Yeah,
I'm gonna
do it.
I'll just go up a couple levels, be more broad. But okay, so one is obviously completely selfish. I've always wanted to essentially rent a yacht and cruise around the Mediterranean and see all the countries there and visit.
Can I come with you?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
I want to experience all the culture, all the food, just in that area of the Mediterranean Sea.
Yes.
There's so many
All the
different
food.
countries and food and cultures.
Yes.
So it's always been something that I've wanted to do. That's definitely number one. Number two, from a business standpoint, I want to see the Not So Average Jane mission go national.
Yes.
Because again, I can't do this on my own. I could host a retreat every month for the rest of my life, and I'm still not going to be able to impact all the women that I need to. So I need to, my first goal is to perfect it as much as I can, or at least fine tune it to a point that we have a good cookie cutter stamp of what needs to be done to help these women. And then I want to branch out and partner with other organizations throughout the country and have them join me in this mission of supporting female combat veterans.
Perfect. That's awesome.
And then thirdly, is going to probably make me emotional, but I told myself I would say it anyway.
We got to have Kleenex boxes here. Okay.
I have longed for, and just a lifelong partner.
Oh, yes.
And I know I don't necessarily have all the control in the world over that bucket list. It's not like something you can go do. You can't go pick a man out of a store in a box and all that. But I do. I long for that. I long for someone who accepts me for who I am, embraces all my hopes and aspirations, but also supports my high aspiration. As you can tell, I have a lot of hopes and dreams.
Yes, you do.
And I'm not going to allow anything to get in my way and stop me. I've had a lot of roadblocks in the past and I felt stuck, and I don't want that to feel stuck. So anyway, I would love a life partner, but again, we'll see.
Well, you put the intention out there. That's the first start. Then it's like all the...
And this isn't a solicitation for applications, gentlemen.
No, you're not on
Please
any...
do not contact me.
Yes, no, don't seek her out on a dating app. Maybe.
No.
Okay.
Maybe. Yeah. They can contact you.
Okay.
You be the
And you
filter,
can vet
Julie.
them. And then you can pass them to Kate, and then she can vet them, and then about 14 other women, and then maybe.
Anastasia, yes, as well. Yes,
Oh my
yes.
goodness.
No, yes. And I think a man that comes into play that understands and values your impact.
Yes.
And they want to help you leverage that. So they're out there.
I believe that. I
Yes.
do.
Yes.
It just hasn't been my experience.
Yes. Maybe Kate and I, through our husbands, we will know some people.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Okay. Our next question.
Next question. If you could uninvent something, what would it be?
Also a hard thing for me because
Totally.
I love inventions. They come from a place of fixing or making our lives easier in some capacity. So I'm going to be somewhat controversial here and say that I would uninvent synthetic forms of drugs.
Oh, those
Pharmaceutical.
I'm on board
I would
with you on that.
uninvent any type of synthetic form. And because the more I got thinking about it is people are like, oh, but modern medicine saves lives. I'm like, but all synthetic forms of drugs are derived from a natural method. And typically synthetic forms are made because they can mass produce it and push it out there. It's easier to find and whatnot. But it also causes so much havoc and pain and addiction. And I'm very much on the homeopathic, holistic side of things. And so I think we should look to what the earth has already given us, which is what we did for centuries to begin with. So I would uninvent synthetic pharmaceuticals.
Our last question, Dallas. Okay, if you could pass the mic to a Montana woman to share their story on the IWD406 podcast, who would she be and why?
This was a no-brainer for me. So we've already discussed her a little bit throughout the podcast, but it would be Heather Maccabee with Shifting Sands Holistic Therapy. And she just has a beautiful story. I recently related who she is in this analogy of that she literally walked through fire, mended her own wounds, put on a fire-resistant suit, and then walked back in the fire to pull more of us out.
What?
And
That's
so
unreal.
that's the human she is. That's the spirit she is. She's magnificent, and I would love to share her with the world.
Oh, I love that, Dallas. That's so good. So good.
Yeah. And I know she's following you guys now.
Shifting Sands. Yeah, I know. Heidi said she's amazing.
Yeah.
Dallas,
Yes, ma'am.
what a great conversation. Like crazy good. Kate?
Thank you for joining us, Dallas, and
Yeah, it's
being
been so
vulnerable
fun.
and sharing your story.
Yes, so empowering. You're going to hit so many hearts, and you're going to inspire a person that's listening to like want to connect with you, especially if they're sitting where you were years ago and seeing where you're at now. And they're like, she's also providing services for me to feel better and to heal. So I think
you're going to help
so many people.
So many.
And I want to also say, can I be on your yacht and your plane with your Not So Average Jane podcast blasted across the side? Awesome.
It's a tribe. Like I said, I would not be where I am today without the incredible women who've been around me and supported me and picked me up when I'm down. And I'm not going to get to where I want to go without those women around me too. So any chance I get to celebrate with those who have been there through and through with me, I take. So yes, we will get a very big yacht.
Yes. Yes. Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
A special thank you to our podcast guest. You can find all of her links in the description of this episode. If you like what you heard, please hit subscribe. You will be notified of future podcast guests. Follow us on our social media platforms and stay tuned for our next podcast chat with an amazing Montana woman.